First Samuel chapter 17. I was inspired to kind of go over this. I think this is very important. Talking about the spirit that Saul had of jealousy. That's the topic today. And first, we're going to talk about a little bit of context. So this is just the story of David and Goliath. I think everyone should know this story. Is very popular. But we're going to go towards the end. So David already beat Goliath. After he kills him, let's go down to verse. I think it's 50. Yeah, verse 55. All right. Verse 54. All right. So David took the head of the Philistine and brought it to Jerusalem, but he put his armor in his tent. Now, David just killed Goliath and he cut his head off. All right. Verse 55. And when Saul saw David go forth against the Philistine, he said unto Abner, the captain of the host, Abner, whose son is this youth? And Abner said, as thy soul liveth, O king, I cannot tell. So they're like, who is this guy that just killed the Philistine that we couldn't kill? Right. And on the top of that, David did it without Saul's armor because he's like, I can't fit your armor, it's too heavy. So he did it without even Saul's equipment. So they're curious about this guy. Verse 56, and the king said, inquire thou whose son the stripling is. In verse 57, and as David returned from the slaughter of the Philistine, Abner took him and brought him before Saul with the head of the Philistine in his hand. In verse 58, and Saul said unto him, whose son art thou, thou young man? And David answered, I am the son of thy servant Jesse the Bethlehemite. All right, it's because he was born in Bethlehem, right? The city of David. That's where Christ was born. All right, so now let's go to chapter 18. Now, verse 1, Jonathan and David. And it came to pass when he had made an end of speaking unto Saul that the soul of Jonathan was knit with the soul of David, and Jonathan loved him as his own soul. So they were really best friends. You ever have a friend that you may consider like a blood brother? They might not be related, but y'all have such a close friendship, kinship that just have this strong bond. That's the type of relationship, friendship that David and Jonathan had. All right. So, Jonathan is the son of Saul. All right. So, verse 2, and Saul took him that day and would let him go no more home to his father's house. So, Saul was so interested in this man, David, this young man, that he was like, no, you're going to stay in the palace with us. Because, some you may think because he's just being gracious towards David because he just killed the Philistine, but you can see that he's just kind of want to keep an eye on this man who is this guy who's so valiant in battle. Verse 3, then Jonathan and David made a covenant because he loved him as his own soul. In verse 4, Jonathan stripped himself of the robe that was upon him and gave it to David, and his garments, even to his sword, and to his bow, and to his girdle. Now, I want to just address this too. It's a little side note, but because we live in 2022 and it's a lot of propaganda out here, people make the implication they read these scriptures and say that that God was for homosexuality and they quote this scripture, and I want to just address that. Just because in the scripture it said that Jonathan stripped his robe and gave it to David, that doesn't mean that they had any type of intimacy with each other. In the same way, if you're in a locker room or like you played a sporting event, you take off your clothes next to your teammates, but that doesn't mean that engage in any sexual activity with them. So it's the same way they were part of the military, so they would strip their armor away from each other, and they would actually share different things, whether it's like a sword or a belt, a shield, things like that. And Jonathan, he was royalty. He was the son of the prince, so he has the best equipment. So he gave it to David. So that's what that was addressing. But I just wanted to clarify that because Jonathan and David, they were nobility. If they were engaged in any that type of activity, they would have been put to death. Especially David. He's a man of the Lord. So verse 5, and David went out whithersoever Saul sent him and behaved himself wisely. And Saul set him over the men of war and was accepted in the sight of all the people and also in the sight of Saul's servants. So Saul made him basically the commander of his military staff, right? And it came to pass as they came when David was returned from the slaughter of the Philistine, that the women came out of the cities of Israel singing and dancing to meet King Saul with tabrets and with joy and with the instruments of music. Oh, oh, hey y'all, we are in 1 Samuel chapter 18. All right, so we're just talking about Saul and Saul's interaction with David right now. All right, so verse 6, and it came to pass as they came when David was returned from the slaughter of the Philistines, that the women came out of the cities of Israel, singing and dancing to meet King Saul with tabrets, with joy, and with instruments of music. And the women answered one another as they played and said, Saul has slain his thousands, and David his tens thousands. Saul has slain his thousands, and David his tens thousands. I wonder how that song went. It probably was a nice little rhythm to that back in the day. But you can see that type of comparison is already being brought up. You know, Saul initially was supposed to kill Goliath, but he couldn't. And now David did that, and now he's getting the acclaim, he's getting the attention, he's getting the women. So it's like a lot of men, they get jealous when other women are attracted to this person instead of me. Why isn't she like into me as much as she into him? That's when dudes start to get jealous because they really want that attention. That's why brothers got to check that spirit of wanting attention all the time. Only or that validation from women. The validation that we should get as men is from the Most High. That's the most important because all this stuff is just fickle. It's not that important in life. But Saul, he's very carnal. So verse 8, Saul was very wroth or very angry, and the saying displeased him. So he didn't like that little song that they were making. Saul is slain his thousands, David his tens thousands. And he said, they have ascribed unto David 10,000s, and to me they ascribe but thousands. And what can he have more but the kingdom? So he's already going to the extreme. He's like, okay, so they already thinking he's a better fighter than me. He's a better, military strategist than me. What's next? He's gonna have my throne. And so verse 9, Saul eyed David from all day and forward. So it's like he's giving the evil eye, so he's like constantly looking at him side eye, like distrustfully. I don't trust this guy, even though he hasn't done anything. I actually moved him into my palace. I made him the leader of my military, but I'm side-eyeing him. So you see how Saul's already double-minded right now. All right. So I want to highlight that background because I wanted to highlight that background because now we're going to see the full manifestation of his jealousy. So Saul turns against David. Verse 10. And it came to pass on the morrow, so the next day, that the evil spirit from God came upon Saul, and he prophesied in the midst of the house. And David played with his hand as at other times, and there was a javelin in Saul's hand. So David would play his harp or his musical instrument to calm down David or calm down Saul. And, I think we talked about this before. Orchestra music has been shown to actually help relieve anxiety or relieve headaches in certain people. So it's like, David had the spirit of prophesying with his instruments and also prophesying with his psalms. So, but he was actually able to cast out spirits with his music. So Saul he actually initially hired David to play his instrument to actually calm down Saul's anxiety and that spirit that was tormenting him. But right now, this evil spirit now from God, from the Most High. So the Most High sent the evil spirit to Saul, and he prophesies in the midst of the house. So what is this spirit prophesying? Not it's not good. I'll tell you that because we'll see in the next verse. So this spirit is telling Saul things about David, and now you see right here in the context, Saul has a javelin, or he has a spear in his hand, right? So he's probably playing around with it. You know how people twirl like a pencil in the hand. He's probably twirling this javelin in his hand while he's listening to the music. In verse 11, Saul cast the javelin, for he said, I will smite David even to the wall with it. And David avoided all of his presence twice. So you can imagine, you playing an instrument, and all of a sudden you see something. I was like, oh, snap. Like that thing just almost hit me. I was like, oh, snap. They try to kill me. He's like, what's going on? So verse 12, Saul was afraid of David because of the Lord was with him, or because the Lord was with him and was departed from Saul. So now, you see just the mixed emotions, all that is going on. Saul, he's first excited, he's curious about David, and then he's excited to have such a strong leader of his military. He invites him back to his house. His son is best friends with him, but now he's jealous. He's upset that these women create this song, and then he gets angry, and then he gets so angry that he wants to kill David, and now he's afraid of David. So all these emotions start to get in, and I want to highlight that because that's how Satan really attacks the mind of a man and a woman. He really makes things so emotional, unstable for you, because when you're emotionally unstable, you're easily to be manipulated, and that's how anybody tries to get you. I mean, any person that's trying to control you, they try to get you manipulated. They try to manipulate your emotions. In relationships, that's why it's like a woman or a man, they'll try to get you upset, or they'll probably try to get you so, just off your square. They try to get you into a certain position where you're compromised, and you try to do things you know, out of not your norm. And then that's how things start to go left. So you always have to, keep your mind straight. That's why you always keep the most high first. Saul clearly does not have the most high first. He has ego first. And his ego is bruised. That's why he's upset with David. David hasn't said anything this whole chapter yet. But that's why it's all in Saul's mind. That's why I said that spirit is prophesying these scenarios in in Saul's mind. And that's why it's like Saul is unable to distinguish reality. He's having almost a dissociative event right now. I'm not trying to medically diagnose the man, but he's almost seems like he's schizophrenic in this way, just to how he's acting. He's very, very all over the place, right? So verse 13, therefore Saul removed him from him and made him his captain over 1,000. He went out and came in before the people. So Saul is so afraid of him, he just go out and war. Don't be in my house. All right. So verse 14, David behaved himself wisely in all his ways, and the Lord was with him. Wherefore, when Saul saw that he behaved himself very wisely, he was afraid of him. So Saul, he probably put him in the military to try to almost, make him scared, like kind of fearful. When people go out to battle, people start doing things like that. They start seeing death and things like that. People start getting, off. But he's like, David is actually successful in this. David he was he's a shepherd. He's keeper of the sheep. He's not a military general, but he's just so naturally gifted. So Saul is even more afraid because he's like, I'm trying to get rid of this guy, but he's so good at everything. So he's afraid of him. He's not really afraid. He's just his real emotion is jealousy, it's envy, but it's being manifested as fear. And jealousy is one of those emotions that is very difficult to pinpoint on exactly what it is, because a lot of people, they don't admit that they're jealous. They admit that they're sad, or they admit that they're bothered. They admit that they're angry. But it's hard for people to admit that I'm jealous of this person. That's why I'm angry, or that's why I feel depressed. That's why I feel afraid. I'm envious. I wish I had their life. I wish I was them. I wish I didn't do this. I wish I did that. That's the real emotion. So that's what Saul is battling right now. And that's what I want to talk about. That's what the Bible study is about. So verse 16, but all Israel and Judah loved David because he went out and came in before them. And yeah, so that's David is just, like I said, David hasn't said anything yet this chapter, but he's just his ability to kind of just have that charisma and that ability to just be so good at things is causing Saul to be uncomfortable, but it's making the whole nation love him more. So, the more people that love him, the more that Saul hates him, the inverse relationship, right? But at the same time, you see right here, Saul is kind of in mixed emotions because he's actually making David more powerful. He's giving him more authority, that he's afraid that eventually David's going to take all the authority. He's going to be the king, but he's giving him more authority and more and more and more. A lot of these men that he's going to war with, they're going to side with David when Saul turns on him ultimately, right? So they're going to be David's men. So Saul is ultimately preparing his own demise by his own emotions, or his emotional instability. Verse 17, and Saul said to David, behold, my elder daughter, Merab, her will I give thee to wife. Only be thou valiant for me and fight the Lord's battles. For Saul said, let not my hand be upon him, but let the hand of the Philistines be upon him. So Saul basically is trying to set David up to be killed in battle, right? So he's trying to get rid of him because he's like, he can't do it because, he knows that the Lord is with him. The Most High is with David. So he's like, let the Philistines kill him because I can't kill him. And David right here says in verse 18, David said unto Saul, who am I, and what is my life or my father's family in Israel that I should be son-in-law to the king? But it came to pass at the time that Merab, Saul's daughter, should have been given to David, and she was given to Adriel the Metholathite to wife. So, David is also, kind of, crafty as well. He's like, I don't, there's something about, this guy. He's like, should I just, and also David, he's saying, I'm a poor, I come from a poor family. Who am I to just be, to be married into your kingdom? Like, that's a lofty thing to ask of me. And he's like, so, but that's the highlight of that. I just want to talk about jealousy and how things can be so insidious and how it manifests into just these emotions to be so angry, and eventually it can lead to you have a desire to kill the person. Because if you can't, let's say you can get rid of the person out of your life in regards to how they are compared to you first you compare yourself to them, you try to be like them, or you try to manipulate them. If you can't do it that way, then eventually you want them removed in in any way possible. And that's when you see it eventually. And towards the end of 1 Samuel, David is constantly running away from Saul because Saul is trying to pursue and kill him, because he's letting this basically this demon control his mind. So but at the end of the day, it's going to ultimately fall back on Saul. That's the thing about envy and jealousy. It ultimately, the feelings that you project on someone else eventually comes back to you in the worst way. So you want to stay away from that jealousy spirit, that comparison spirit. That's very insidious. You don't really notice it. And then so you also always have to self-examine yourself. You always have to check yourself. So that's very important. But the how you do that the best way is just you always focus on your own individual talent and goals and gifts, because the Most High has given us all the gifts. We have to focus on that the best of our ability and try to cultivate that gift. And then we can collaborate with each other rather than trying to say like, oh, I wish I was you, I wish I could do it like you, I wish I was like yours or something like that. It's like, no, you work on yours, I work on mine, and hopefully we can do something that's good together. That's how you build a culture, that's how you build a community. So that's important. That's why, because David and Saul, they could have did a lot of good things together. Saul would have saw it that way because he had a real true ace in his right hand. But and Jonathan saw that. That's why he was so willing to help David, because he knew how great he was naturally. So that's all I got. I didn't want to be too long. Let me stop.